There are nights when time seems suspended, as if the universe is holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable. Halloween, with its veil of mystery and darkness, always brings with it a chill that belongs not just to the wind, but to the depths of what we cannot explain. In 2015, something terrible happened. Terror gained a face, and blood stained what were once just fantasies and games. This is not a story for the weak, nor for those who seek comfort. It is a memory impregnated with shadows, a scar that time cannot. Story 1: A Macabre Night. Halloween night 2015 was the last time laughter echoed through the halls of the old school. The lights flickered, the sweet smell of pumpkin and candy filled the air, mixing with the muffled music coming from the speakers. I remember how time seemed to fluctuate that night, as if something dark hovered over us, watching our every move, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. John Smith, the boy everyone knew but no one in a suit understood, was there with a cold smile and a costume that reflected more than the spirit of the holiday. It reflected the monster he kept hidden. It wasn't the first time he felt like something wasn't right with him. There was a disturbing stillness in his eyes, something that didn't fit with the chaos of the youth we shared. But that night, Halloween gave him the permission he always wanted, to become who he always was. Between the laughter, drinks, and trivial conversations, blood gushed. I was there, in the middle of it all, watching the horror unfold, frozen in fear. One by one, our classmates fell under the sharp cut of his knife. The metallic sound mixed with the scream of horror that drowned out the festive music. It was not just physical death that it brought, but the erasure of dreams, the brutal rupture of the innocence that, until then, we believed immortal. When it was all over, the silence that remained was almost as deafening as the screams from just a few minutes ago. The floor, stained with blood, was a grotesque reminder of the terror John had sown. I sometimes wonder if Halloween itself, with its aura of mystery and death, had chosen him as its prophet that year. His eyes, so empty, seemed to search for something, a redemption or a pleasure that only he could understand. He tried to escape, of course. Detective Derek Arley, known for his cold, calculated precision, was on the hunt. I remember the sirens echoing in the distance, approaching with a sense of inevitability. John ran, but fate always has a way of claiming its own. 4 shots, 4 precise punctures in his body. Each bullet seemed to carry the weight of each of his victims' revenge. Arley watched as John fell to the ground, blood mixing with the earth like a macabre offering. But there's something I can never forget. Even as his body was consumed by weakness, as blood flowed from his wounds, John still smiled. A smile that did not belong to this world. A smile that shouldn't exist. I always wonder if, in his last moments, he saw something that we couldn't see. Something beyond death. Something that waited patiently for him on the other side. Today, silence haunts me. And sometimes on Halloween nights, when the wind blows cold and the moon peeks through the clouds, I hear the distant sound of laughter. Not the laughs we missed at that party, but empty laughs like John Smith's that night. If you like this video and want to continue watching incredible content, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the bell. This way you will be the first to receive all the news and will not miss any details. And of course, leave your comment. We want to know what you think, your ideas and suggestions. Let's go on this journey together. And so, as the dry leaves continue to fall and the air fills with the dark chill of autumn, I carry this night with me, like an invisible scar that will never heal. Halloween, once a harmless celebration of costumes and candy, is now a haunting reminder that there are forces beyond our understanding, lurking in the shadows, waiting for a moment to emerge. I never return to that clearing. But every year, when the jack-o'-lanterns start to glow and the wind blows through the trees, I feel something. A shiver that alerts me that what happened that night was not forgotten. Not by time, not by me, not by the shadows. They are still there, waiting patiently, like hunters on the prowl, waiting for the next unwary soul to cross their domain. And maybe, just like that night, no one realizes the danger until it's too late. Because certain doors, once opened, can no longer be closed. Story 2: The Invisible. Halloween night always carries with it an invisible weight, something that moves in the shadows, dancing between children's laughter and the glow of jack-o'-lanterns. But that night there was something different. It was as if the darkness was more alive, more dense, like a black veil that was slowly closing over us. No one understood what was happening until it was too late. The party was in full swing in a secluded clearing, surrounded by tall trees that seemed to lean over to watch us. The wind was blowing cold, but we were distracted by our fantasies, laughter, and the loud sound of music that reverberated in the night. Deep down, I felt something wrong, a chill that ran through my skin every time I looked at the dark line where the trees met the sky. Something was watching, something that shouldn't be there. The lights hanging from the trees began to flicker erratically. Some laughed, thinking it was just an electrical problem or part of the macabre decor. But the air around us grew heavy, as if time itself was hesitating to continue. It was then that the music abruptly stopped, plunging the party into an oppressive silence. The first to disappear was Tom. He was laughing, dancing, and then, in the blink of an eye, he just wasn't there anymore. At first we thought it was a joke, part of Halloween, but we soon realized something more sinister was at play. Others began to disappear, one by one, without any warning. Their laughter faded, and only silence took the place where there was life before. When I finally understood what was happening, it was too late. That clearing wasn't just any place. It was an ancient circle, forgotten by the living but not by the dead. That night, we had inadvertently summoned something that dwelt in the shadows, a hungry presence, thirsty for souls. The veil between the worlds was thinner than ever, and we were its prey. I tried to run, but my feet felt rooted to the ground as if the tree roots had grabbed me, dragging me down into the cold, damp earth. In the center of the clearing, shadows began to writhe, taking shape, and within them eyes that should never have been seen. I could feel their cold pass through my body, an ice that didn't come from the wind, but from something much older, something that inhabited the darkness long before us. The screams began, echoing through the forest, but there was no one to hear. One by one, my friends were consumed by the shadows, their voices dissolving into the wind. I, the last one standing, tried to fight whatever was pulling us, but it was useless. The darkness claimed us, like a patient predator that had finally caught up with its prey. And then silence fell. The kind of silence you only find in places where death is absolute. The party, the joy, the faces I knew so well, everything was swallowed up by emptiness. I was alone in the darkness, the last witness to a horror that should never have been released. Now, whenever Halloween approaches, I can feel that presence again. I know she's still there, waiting patiently in the clearing where time stood still. And I know that eventually she will come back. Because certain doors, once opened, never close completely. Story 3: A Palpable Darkness. That Halloween night, something in the air seemed different, charged with an invisible tension that enveloped us without us even realizing it. It was as if the darkness had an unusual heavy thickness, sticking to our skin, while laughter and music echoed in the old house. The party, full of costumes and masks, seemed like a naive escape from reality, as if we were all on the brink of something dangerous, but blind to what was coming. I arrived late as usual. My hands were still shaking from the events of the day, from the work that suffocated me, but that night I just wanted to forget. The house was one of those old mansions, forgotten by time and embraced by solitude. A perfect place for a Halloween party, or so I thought. When I crossed the rusty iron gate, something inside me hesitated. A chill ran down my spine, and for a moment I almost turned away. But the lights inside were shining, and I could hear the buzz of voices, the promise of fun pulling me forward. The door creaked as I pushed it open, and the air inside was thick, filled with a sweet, almost sickly smell. The costumes were elaborate, but there was something unsettling about each masked face, as if the masks were beginning to merge with the skin, distorting what was human. I didn't recognize most of the people, but that didn't seem to matter. I began moving around the room, trying to blend in, the feeling of discomfort growing silently. And then I saw him. In the darkest corner of the room, against the wall, was someone I knew, or thought I knew. The man wore a simple skull mask, but there was something in his eyes. Eyes that, even through the dark void of the sockets, I knew were watching me. There was a weight to them, something I couldn't ignore. I was drawn to him like a magnet pulled by an invisible force, without understanding why, without wanting to resist. "You shouldn't be here," he whispered in a voice that seemed to come not from his mouth but from inside me. The party continued around us, but it was as if time had stopped at that moment just for the two of us. I tried to ask who he was, but the words died before they escaped my lips. He approached slowly, and every step he took made the air around me feel denser, as if space was compressing. "They're coming," he said. "Don't you see?" And then the lights flickered. First once, so again. And on the third blink, the entire room changed. The people who had previously laughed and danced were now motionless, their bodies slumped, distorted, as if time had suddenly crushed them. The sound of the music disappeared, and all that was left was an oppressive silence, broken only by the sound of my own breathing. I looked around in panic, but the masked man was gone. The figures around me didn't move, and a primal fear took hold of me. I wanted to run, to scream, but my legs were rooted to the ground as if fear itself had rooted them. It was then that I felt a cold hand touch my shoulder. I turned around, and there he was again, but now without the mask. His face was pale, his eyes were empty, and he smiled a dead smile, filled with an inexplicable sadness. "You shouldn't have come," he repeated. And it was at that moment that I realized the terrible truth. I was no longer at the party. It was no longer anywhere I could recognize. I had crossed some kind of threshold, some portal that shouldn't have been opened. Darkness enveloped me, and the sound of laughter, distant, empty laughter, echoed around me. I never left that party again.